I want to illustrate this idea of there being no class scale now with a school that we've been working with in Wisconsin called Kettle, Moraine, a middle school in Wisconsin. And this school is divided into two parts. A part which is called the legacy classrooms, which is a nice way of talking about old-fashioned classrooms with 4 walls, 1 teacher, 30 kids, and another part which is called Create. And what's happening is one of the parents at the school is an architect, and they're gradually going through and pulling down those walls and building mixed spaces, open spaces, small rooms. The teachers work in a staff room, which is a glass space in the middle of the space. And what we have is the teachers working at one moment with 1 student, another moment with 10 students, another moment everybody's working together, but they're working together online. So it's this thing about variable scale as opposed to fixed scale. But it really can't be done without these technology-mediated tools, one of which in the case of this school is Scholar, where, for example, 100 students might work on the one project where they're doing peer review of each other's work. But what that means, interestingly, is that you've got 100 students in one scale, and then you've got 3 people doing peer reviews and interacting with each other. So you've got another scale of 3 operating inside the scale of 100. So similarly, in environments which are much, much bigger, there need be, so let's say we've got a MOOC, for example, there needn't be if the settings for that MOOC are interact with 3 other people around peer review of your work, it doesn't make any difference in terms of the intimacy of the relationship and the quality of person-to-person interaction, whether there are 3 people in that course or 3,000 people in the course. So again, this flexibility around the scales of human groups, it's an interesting phenomenon, and it's part of the changes that are going on in education at the moment. So now this is the video from Kettle, Moraine in Wisconsin.
Many, many years ago, a group of community members and administrators from Kettle, Moraine had a vision for learning that was different from the past, basically 100 years of learning. So they really wanted to commit to this phrase that we have here, learning without boundaries. So Create really is the product of many, many years of people coming together and thinking about what learning and education needed to transform into to prepare kids for jobs that we couldn't predict anymore. So that's really kind of in a nutshell how this kind of came to be. Mm-hmm. You can have multiple people discussing and commenting back and forth.
They're seeing things how other people see them, so you get a wide range of perspectives from kids, which makes me a better thinker. It allows for that. Instead of here's what I have to say, you can take what I think and other people can comment, and you can put, again, we talked about that depth. It pushes kids thinking deeper.
We can take somebody else's goals, and we can see that all on CG Scholar because it's in community and it's we all add an update so we can all see everybody's goals, and then we can say, okay, they really based their group about using a mentor text, and so how can we learn from that and apply it to our group?
And the peer-to-peer feedback is like nothing else, because you have someone's work in front of you and you probably don't know whose it is, and it doesn't matter, because all that really matters is what they have evidence of in that place, and then the rubric, the things that we're kind of looking at and assessing them on.
We usually interact with a lot more because since it's online, it isn't as awkward meeting someone for the first time, and you have something to talk about and meet new people since you guys are both working.
Beauty with Scholar is that they don't know who you are or who's the one reviewing, and by giving this constructive feedback, sometimes I go home and I talk to my dad, I'm like, I'm not getting very good feedback because they know who I am or they're kind of biased towards me, but by using this I'm able to see, so here's what they're going to give me and they don't need to know who I am, and this constructive feedback helps me to improve it farther than it would have if they'd known who had constructed the piece.
Feedback that really helps me is when I get feedback overall instead of like punctuation, you missed a period there. I like it when people give me feedback on the overall what I could work on.
When you focus on those lifelong skills and those 21st century skills, I think it better prepares kids for the world they're going into. Because the truth is, we have no idea what kinds of jobs these kiddos are going to have when they get out of here. And so we have to prepare them for all of that, but also the kind of student learner who's going to create jobs. So I think that's really exciting, is when you are thinking about these kids, is really fostering skills and helping them develop skills that would allow them to in the future create new jobs and new careers that we would never imagine.
In Create, we do more of like our own pace, and I think CG Scholar really helped with that, because then people who maybe need a little bit more work on their writing can still get reviews, whereas people who need a little less work on their writing can also get reviews from people, and it's reflected on their writing, not just everyone in general's.
We were able to use Scholar to put that in, and other people would be able to edit and change and like make suggestions to our story. So that was one of the ways we use it in social studies.
Yeah, at times the legacy classroom would get a bit boring because the students would talk and one student would talk at a time. But on Scholar, more than one person can talk, and they are able to branch out of what they usually do and share their voices.
Very different from legacy, because usually we'd all be looking over something and a teacher would kind of say, oh, here's what you have to notice. Well, for this, they're able to look at it and they're able to look at the targets and see how they want to notice it.
Biggest difference going back into a legacy for me is that it's teacher directed, where this kind of the Create kind of environment is more student led. The reins are given more to the students, where in a legacy classroom the teacher still holds those reins.
So the analytics is a tool that is allowing us to start having these insights that just, even if you wanted to, it's just too overwhelming. One teacher, a bunch of papers, it's just not reasonable. But CG Scholar gives you that information, and that transforms everything. When a kid self-evaluates, here's where I think I am against this rubric, and being able to, for me to go, oh, okay, we need to talk about this because he's missing something here. He's not here. Why is that? That is huge. And being able to help a kid understand where they are and where they want to be and how to get there. So a tool like CG Scholar is essential in personalizing.
Absolutely. We know as teachers that we have to meet our kids at where they're at and let the kids have some more reign and voice in their learning.
We're talking about how people are either student and self-driven and can work by themselves, or are teacher-driven. And Scholar allows both of those kinds of people to work together and both achieve their goals.
I really don't think you can have a personalized, student-centered environment without first helping learners to understand who they are. So I think it starts there on a very basic level, and that requires a lot, because I don't think a lot of learners have a whole lot of experience with reflecting on who they are and what they want. And I think a lot of education technologies were basically trying to recreate the didactic systems and procedures and things that we did just in an online format. But that doesn't transform learning. It's just recreating a lecture in a video. The great thing about CG Scholar is that it is not just recreating pencil and paper in an online format. That's not at all what it is. It's facilitating peer-to-peer feedback. It's facilitating collaboration. It's facilitating collaborative knowledge production. These kids are coming up and finding resources, and what does that mean? And they suddenly are curators of all these sources and trying to determine the meaning of that. And I mean, the synthesis alone is just amazing in the CG Scholar platform. And that doesn't happen on a word processor. It just doesn't happen. We came together as a community and said, look, these are our expectations of each other. This is what we want. This is the kind of mindset, and we talk a lot about growth mindset and habits of mind. And so that becomes essential, because otherwise, when you take these walls down, if you don't have that positive environment where you're holding each other accountable, this would be very difficult work to do.
If you'd like to read more into the ideas that we've been talking about in this video, this is a paper that Mary and I produced recently about assessment and pedagogy in the area of machine mediated learning in this book.